Good morning, everyone. My name is Kenem Isiche, the CCA Director for West Africa, and welcome to the 2021 US Africa Business Summit. We hope that you use the chat functions to amplify the conversation on this virtual stage, and also use the Q&A box for your questions. For those who need it, we're providing interpretations in English, French, and Portuguese. Enjoy the session. And let me turn it over now to Mima, who will moderate the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Akanem. Good morning, good afternoon, maybe even good evening. I'm not sure what all parts of the world are joining us at the moment. I'm Mima Nedeljkovic. I'm the chairman of Africa Global Schaefer Group. I'm very pleased to moderate this panel. I'm also on the board of the Corporate Council in Africa and was one of the original members when we founded this many years ago. I am very pleased to be able to moderate, as I've been involved as our group, Africa Global Schaefer, has been now, I think, over 50 years all over the continent. I myself just a few years less than that. So I'm very, very happy to really host, moderate, and bring forward this very, very exciting panel we have here with us today. If I can sort of set the table here and making then introductions to the panelists, and then we'll go forward from there. I want to be sure to have also enough time for Q's and A's to be able to interact with the audience. So agribusiness, this is what the discussion is all about. We're talking about post-COVID. I'm tired of the COVID area. We all are still suffering through it, but I believe we're slowly coming out of it. The key, really the key here for us is, what is the role of agribusiness? Yes, it's food security, it's absolutely essential, but it's also the driving engine of regenerating economic activity. And I think particularly in Africa, if I can lay the table this way, we're in a continent that's heavily urbanizing, population doubling. We're going to be reaching, depending on how many years out you want, 1.5 billion to 2 billion. Over half will be urban. So the whole food industry will be a very key element, not only of sustaining what we all have to eat, but we also all have to create and generate economic activity, livelihoods. So for me, that's the nexus that I find most interesting in agribusiness, agri-industry, and particularly both the SMEs and the growing businesses coming out of that sector. I think we will want to also discuss how can US companies be collaborating with African companies, both African born and bred companies, as well as diaspora companies that sort of connected us between the two continents already. So that is part of the structure of this panel. And we have also, to give sort of the perspective from the US government side, a representative from the US Department of Agriculture. What I will do is I'll just quickly name who is on the panel, and then I will go ahead and then one by one allow you to both introduce yourselves briefly, who you are, what you do, background, which I will set with the first question to each of you. And then I'll do a second round that we can open up with Q's and A's. So we have on the panel, in order that I guess that's been presented to me, John Kumantaris, who is the chairman of Flour Mills Nigeria. John, good afternoon, welcome. We have next on the screen is Monica Musonda, the CEO of Java Foods, based out of Lusaka in Zambia. John, I believe you're joining us from either Lagos or Abuja, but somewhere in Nigeria. We have Fatai Yusufu, the president of Fayez Inc., based out of Sacramento, California. So I'm sure we're waking him up quite early. Welcome, Fatai. And we have Clay Hamilton, the associate administrator and general sales manager for USDA, from whom we want to hear particularly the role, I think, increasingly the USDA is coming into the sort of both the commercial trade with the continent, as well as promoting investments in some vehicles that they have for doing so. That is the panel. If along the way, depending on these connectivity issues, we were scheduled to also have Mulai Laksan and Ali, who is a senior vice president of OCP, the phosphate company from Morocco. I will introduce him at that time. But if I may, please, at this point, then go ahead and have John Kumantaris, chairman of Flour Mills Nigeria. John, very briefly, who obviously people know you well, know the flour mills, but I think for those that don't, a brief of what all you guys are doing in Nigeria. And then I think you've been very passionate about feeding the nation for decades. You are one of the largest, if not the largest agro-industrial group in the country, maintaining a rich tradition, portfolio in different foods. How are you coping with this sort of re-entry, if you will, into some kind of normality in the world? And how are you dealing with the value chains and the connections across the world with both the inputs and the outputs coming out? As a kind of first question, I'll come back following later for more detail. Please, John, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mima. I'm John Kumantaros, chairman of Flour Mills of Nigeria. We are a publicly quoted company in Nigeria with 15,000 employees. We began in 1960 with the birth of the nation, and we effectively have we're involved in 5 core food value chains: grains, sweeteners, oils and fats, proteins, and starches. So we hit really 5 core food value chains, and we're vertically integrated up most of those supply chains so that we can secure our raw materials, process them, and deliver them to businesses or consumers in branded products. To address your question, Mima, I mean, I think the whole world is seeing fundamentally the disrupted supply chain coming back on stream, and that's obviously creating a lot of delays and a lot of disruptions, and really that's been in a way to the benefit of local production and integration, because it's critical for Nigeria. I'll speak of Nigeria, that we integrate agriculture with industry, and that we create surplus raw materials that can be used in industry, and create this virtuous cycle of using our producing and manufacturing our own products. So this really supports, when smuggled goods have to pay a lot of money in containers, and there's a lot of disruption of trade and so on. This really helps the local sectors integrate and produce their goods. And it's again so vital that we integrate agriculture with industry so that the farmers are making money and the raw materials for the industry are at sustainable levels. And that's the critical supply chain that really Nigeria and Africa needs to develop more and more internally in order to feed and fuel and fund the growth of the future for that tremendous, great demographics that Nigeria, that Africa has.
Very well. Thank you, John. If I may turn now to Monica Musondo, the CEO of Java Foods. Tell us a little bit about Java Foods. And if you would, I think particularly there's the whole sort of discussion has been kind of farm to table. Now that's gone further, it's farm to not just table, but to the stomach, the whole nutrition aspect of food. So yes, it's food industry. Yes, it's the sort of requirements of growth. But what particularly, if I can also focus, is Java Foods doing in terms of the nutritional aspects of the food? Over to you, Monica.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for having me on this great panel. I started Java Foods in 2012. I am based in Lusaka, Zambia. Zambia is actually well known for mining and not necessarily for agriculture. So one of the key drivers for me was really to set up a business that was focusing on producing nutritious and affordable food, but using as much locally sourced raw materials as possible. If you look at Zambia's stats in terms of agriculture, we continue to grow on a year-on-year basis. Maize, which is corn, soybean, wheat, peanuts. Year on year, we're seeing our yields grow very well. However, there's still a break. We are still importing. We're still a net importer of food. And that's where I saw the opportunity. I said to myself that if we were able to grow these basic raw materials very well, what can we do about producing food, which is not only just good for you, but also affordable for not just Zambia, but for the region. Zambia is landlocked, and we have around us 9 partners, all who are hungry for food, affordable and nutritious foods. The aspect of nutrition actually came to me later on when I started the business. We actually focused very much on convenience when we started. Zambia being a very young country, focused on the youth market, on aspiration. And then we realized very quickly that the stats around nutrition were very poor. And it's not just Zambia, it's every country in the world. We have now what they call the double burden of malnutrition, which is obesity as well as undernutrition. And we are seeing that very much in countries on the continent. And then we began to ask ourselves the question about what we could do differently about putting food on the table, about processing food that was nutritious, but still affordable. And it takes a lot of work around really understanding what raw materials you can use, around technology, research and development, some of the things which are very difficult for small SMEs such as myself, in order to develop food which is not only affordable, but also good for you. So that's really our background. We still focus very much on really working with partners, with governments, key stakeholders, and really driving the nutrition agenda. It's even more important now after we've come out of we are still in a public health crisis, and the aspect of COVID is not just about health, it's also about what you eat. And we really are pushing this message much more, and also pushing local. I'm really glad that John mentioned that. I think whilst COVID was very, very difficult for many countries, and particularly for small businesses, it actually really put the light on the need to really support local, the need to really look at Africa as a space for supply chains, as a space for a better trade, but also the need to really upscale our SMEs in terms of financing, research and development, products, etc. So it's a very interesting time, and I hope this is a time when we can really lean on better partnerships.
Thank you, Monica, for that introduction. If I may turn now to Fatai Yusufu, founder and president of Fayus Inc., based out of Sacramento, California. And Fatai, if you can maybe just give us the sort of interesting background. I mean, you bring in a lot of raw materials from Africa and elsewhere, package the foods that are then reshipped back onto the continent. And I believe at this stage also looking at putting facilities and reinvesting back in Nigeria. So very interesting sort of round trip investor from the continent. Tell us your story and some of your really, at this point, I think, interests in industrializing certain value chains, agro-value chains in Nigeria. Fatai, over to you. You are muted, Fatai.
Yeah, good morning from the West Coast of the US. I'm really glad to be invited by the CCA and to this fantastic forum. And the panelists are very well advanced in experience. So I'm happy to be here with you, with everyone. Okay, yeah, Fayus Inc. was established in 1992 just to cater for African diasporas in the US and other parts of the world. I mean, as John and Monica alluded, good food and good nutrition, okay, are key to the success of human health. And having lived in the US for quite some time, what I found was we are not well represented when it comes to the nutrition from Africa. So this is what made me establish my company to just cater to Africans living in the US. And we've been doing this thing for a while. Okay, and we have our own brand. It got to a point where we bring raw materials from various parts of Africa to the United States. which we do process, add value, and then redistribute to every point. Okay, and I think we've done a magnificent job of reaching out to every part of the world except the South America, which share the same and similar palate that we all enjoy. Anyway, in order to cut the story short, all we are doing is making sure that people in Africa, the African in Africa, are able to have access to good, nutritious food, okay, and the availability, the supply of that food should be reaching, okay, and we need to enrich. I do understand what Fly Mill has done for Nigeria. However, I think we can do better. We can do better, and this is the reason why I'm bringing back my investment from the US into Africa at large. We try to get raw materials from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Zambia, from South Africa, and we did encounter a lot of hiccups. Okay, either by non-availability or by lack of it. Okay, what if when we wanted, let's say we want 50 metric tons, 50,000 metric tons of one item, we can't even get it we cannot source it from one country. And that is, that's a shame. So with all the innovation that is available to us in the US, in the Western world, okay, I think we can do much better. We can feed ourselves and feed the world. So we have the most arable land, and we have the best opportunity in order to increase the output of raw materials in Africa. And this is the reason why I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Okay, I think I will end it like that, and we can expatiate on it later in the program.
Super, thank you, Fatah. I appreciate that. I see that Mulai Laksen Nali has joined us. Welcome, sir, from OCP in Morocco. Before I turn to Mulai, though, if I may, Clay, come to you, because we've now heard from sort of 3 companies that are in agro processing the food industry at different value chains, value addition. Your moderator included, and we, as I did in an introduction, say that we're heavily involved historically both in sugarcane and rice processing. So that is really what you're seeing right now are very, very successful, both African-born companies, American companies born in Africa and coming across. So nice mix for the OCP, but in there from a USDA perspective, because I know we often have so the DFCs and the USAIDs or the financing entities. I was very glad to see coming on because I want to understand a little more all the new initiatives where USDA is looking at and being able to tie more of the increase in that relationship between American companies and African companies, both on the commercial trading side as well as eventually on the investment side. So Clay, over to you.
Well, thank you very much for that. And thank you for this opportunity. USDA has always had a strong interest in Africa, and it's only increased with the Biden-Harris administration. President Biden, in his address to the African Union in February, noted how important it is that U.S. and Africa partner to rebuild from COVID-19 and just to progress toward the future. So USDA supports that very strongly. And we're ramping up some of our existing programs. We've always had a good, strong presence in Africa. And we really want to do more. We want to use opportunities like this to really explore where our input could be helpful, and also to look for opportunities. I actually head up a strategy group for our agency on Africa, trying to figure out what we need to do, make sure that all of our programs are working together and collaborative. And the main thing that I've learned is that it's really all about education. It's just making sure that people in Africa, companies like yours and others, understand what the U.S. has to offer, what we can do, what our companies have to offer, and educating our companies to make sure that they understand the opportunities that are there in Africa. Maybe I can back up just a little bit right now to explain what the Foreign Ag Service does. We are the international arm of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We have offices in over 60 countries. We represent pretty much USDA to the world through the embassies. We have agricultural attaches. I myself am a foreign service officer. And so we're on the ground helping to manage USDA programs, look for opportunities, and see what we can do to help stimulate trade. We've got a lot of things going on right now that including the Prosper Africa effort, which I think will be an excellent opportunity to make sure that that USDA is working with other government agencies as well as private sector to look for opportunities. But we're doing a lot just to help increase the ability of the African community, the governments, the companies, the farmers to be more productive and more efficient. We have a lot of programs where we go out and do training, fellowship programs where we bring Africans to the United States, either private sector or government, to train them in how we do business, how we do activities, how we look at sanitary and phytosanitary controls, what we're doing on food safety. So we take that as our responsibility to help educate others very seriously. And so we're always looking for opportunities to help Africa as a lot of the countries grow and mature, establish good science-based regulations that will allow them to be more productive and manage the food safety systems there in their country. We have a lot of trade groups. I have over 70 trade associations that we coordinate, and we're always working with them to highlight opportunities in Africa. We do trade missions. We've had two recently, one to Ghana and one to South Africa in the last couple of years. And we're doing virtual trade opportunities where we can introduce our exporters to importers in Africa. We also have other programs like our GSM 102 credit guarantee program. And I know that's been a big support of our wheat sales to Nigeria. This is a program where we will guarantee a U.S. bank if they enter into an agreement that if there is a default, then we will reimburse the bank for their costs. So it helps provide some stability to trade. So there's a lot of things that we take very seriously. I think the next big effort is climate change. What can we do through climate change efforts from this administration and our secretary to help countries in Africa identify what they need to do in the future as the climate shifts, how they can be more resilient, how they can use new technologies, new innovative practices. So we really want to partnership with Africa, and we're looking for any opportunity that we can do. And I think venues like this is an excellent way to do that. And so I look forward to hearing people's questions and seeing where we can go from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clay. And now for speaker, thank you for joining us, Mulai. Mulai Lakhsen Anali is the Senior Vice President of OCP office from Morocco. Mulai, would you please give us a kind of a quick brief as to, for those that might not know what OCP is all about, and then tell us how do you see it? I mean, it's OCP Africa. OCP, I've been watching it moving quite aggressively in trying to develop sort of the whole farming industry, if you will, on the continent. What role do you see OCP playing in that and getting it, if you will, stimulated to grow faster and really industrialize more agriculture on the continent? Mulai, over to you, sir.
Sorry, Maima. I was here. I was just connection issues. I has been waiting to receive the Zoom invitation, so I was here. So now I am. Could you please have some just I didn't hear you very well. If you can just go back and
Sure. Tell us a little bit.
please.
Yeah, tell us a little bit what OCP Africa, what OCP is all about, and what is OCP's role in trying to modernize in agriculture and agro-industry throughout the continent.
Okay, so thank you very much, Nima, for inviting us to this interesting forum. OCP, for those who doesn't know OCP, we are one of the leaders in fertilizer industry. I can say now we are celebrating a century of our existence. We are present in all the continent, and we are on all the value chain from, can I say, the mining to the processing, I mean the local transformation of our minerals to the farmers. And since 2016, with the creation of OCP Africa, the OCP group decided to shift from the approach of just being mining or just a fertilizer producer or just a fertilizer supplier to a solution provider. And that is why now we are very present in many countries in Africa with the development programs. We have been able during this last 6 years to reach 1 million farmers with our different initiatives and programs. And one of these programs is what we call Agribusiness. This program is a holistic offer that can help or address all the challenges that has been faced by the farmers, like the access to the finance, like access to the training, access to the quality inputs, and access also to the market. And we are now present, we have offices in 12 countries. We are also working, I mean, with local partners, with the development partners, and also we have partnered with our internal ecosystem, like the MCSP University incubated by OCP, the OCP Foundation, and also with some GV formed by OCP, between OCP and, if I said, just like one formed with Jacobs and also the other one formed with ABM. We are also working, I mean, on the development of industrial plant with the vision to contribute to transform locally the natural resources when it exists and when the potential is existing. We are working on Nigeria, Ghana, and Ethiopia. All these projects now are under the study. And this is done with the collaboration with the government and with the local partners. Now, and if I can just give something about according to the theme of the US-Africa Business Summit, we have at least, if I can just see, 3 partnerships with the US company. We have the one with Jacobs, and now we can say during for a decade, I can say this is one of success story, GV success story, because GESA now is becoming one of the largest engineering firm in Africa, covering the mining, the industry, and also the renewable energy and also the urban. And now GESA counts more than 2,000 collaborators. We have also in 2017 entering in GV with ABM to create this. GV is working on first, of course, to help OCP for its digitalization transformation, and also to contribute to the digitalization of agriculture in Africa. With ABM, we have developing one platform in Nigeria, which we call Odongo. This platform is giving access to the farmers. Between the farmers are all the stakeholders, like the input supplies, research institutes, and also the off-takers. And the last one, the last partnership we have is that one, the partnership we have, the recent one is with USAID through the West Africa Trade Investment Hub. And this program is aiming to reach 75,000 smallholders within a 3 year period with access to specialty fertilizer and the training. It also intends to establish 36 units of OCP farm and fertile hubs across 13 Nigerian states to create direct and indirect jobs for almost 600 jobs. So I am just giving this 3 examples. I think there is much more can be done. And I wish we will have other opportunity to partner with interested public and private company if they are interested by our that reach the smallholders farmers.
Super. Thank you, Mulai. May I suggest what I'd like to do now is just do a quick round of second questions. I'd like to dive in a little deeper into this whole issue of, we speak of smallholders, we speak of opportunities. I've been at, over 50 years all over the place in the continent. I think it's time that we really get serious about agri-industry. And, so could each of you, from your perspective, sort of dive into how in your value chains do we move forward to properly industrialize agriculture, to make it a growing sector that really is in modern ways coming forward? Very simply, how do we go from the dabas that we see all over the place, or the handheld tools, to proper modernized agriculture? And in so doing, how do we also bring in those small farmers, smallholders into those value chains? Maybe each one of your perspectives, because that's come up with questions, and we'll come back that's being raised by the audience. So John, can I start with you? And particularly in your case, I think it's interesting because you mentioned before the sort of the disruptions in the international trade with COVID, but now you also have issues with the Forex and foreign exchange that Nigeria particularly is facing. How do those two sort of interface, and are they an advantage or disadvantage to growing industrialized agriculture in Nigeria? John?
I think it's an advantage because the more that we can source our raw materials backwardly from the country, the better off we are. Very briefly, we have our sugar plantation, which feeds our sugar mill. We have oil palm, which feeds our oil crushing sector. And we buy about 500,000 tons of maize for our animal feed plant, and another 150,000 tons of soybeans for our also for our oil plant and our feed mill. So we're buying a lot of raw materials, and by necessity, we want those raw materials to be at a good affordable price for our industries. Otherwise, we will not be competitive when we make pasta or couscous or veg oil or sugar compared to imports. So we're looking to build the supply chain to be very robust so that the farmer makes money. If the farmer doesn't make money, he or she's not going to plant, right? So the farmer has to make money, and the raw materials have to be competitive to industry. So it's really about building the supply chain for the food value chains. And this is where I'd like to just, I'd like to go to Clay and say, the USDA with the Prosper Africa and the trade hubs and GSM and USAID, which I know is not your department, but all those enabling capacity building functions that the USDA and the US government is doing are really critical. And there's much more that can be done. Every year the Niger and the Benue flood. But what about some more flood control information up and down the Niger, which doesn't begin in Nigeria? And that would help a lot. And what about statistics on agriculture? Right now, Nigeria produces about 22 million tons of grain. We need to double that in the next 3 to 5 years. And that's going to create tremendous GNP growth, GDP growth, and a virtuous cycle. And it's not that difficult to do. If we can get our yields of wheat up from 1.5 to 4, if we can get our maize from 2.5 to 5 or 6, we can get our soybean from 1.5 to 3. These are not big jumps. And, they really are about agronomy. about getting the right, first, the genetics, the right genetics, nothing fancy, just a normal hybrid, regular seed, but organizing it so that it can get to the farmer at the right time. And that can be done in a private sector, but it needs to be built. Getting the right fertilizer at the right time, and I'll lay that hands over to you, and getting the right agronomic practices in place, and doing this all in a timely fashion, and being able to aggregate at scale at the right time. Simple things, but not so simple. And this is the critical area that we need to double agricultural production in Nigeria, make the green revolution happen in Nigeria, and this will create tremendous economic uplift for agriculture, for industry, and for society as a whole. And just another quick point to Malay, in Nigeria, there's a lot of ammonia and nitrogen that's coming out through the ammonia plants, urea plants. And we look forward, Malay, maybe we can do a partnership sometime in nitrogen, because we do a lot of fertilizer that we distribute to farmers with seeds so that we can aggregate their raw materials back. That's sort of the distribution supply chain. So that's another exciting area in Nigeria about producing, exporting, producing, diversifying the economy, which will also help Nigerian agriculture.
Thank you, John. Can I'll change the order a little bit around since you asked some specific questions. Let me go over to Clay now. And Clay, the one thing many, both African companies as well as U.S. companies, and I guess I sit on both sides of that table, are asking is, really, how can USDA help, particularly the African companies? I mean, the main role clearly, obviously, is pushing and supporting export of U.S. commodities. In the midst of that, how also can that support the growth of in effect, and it's a difficult balance. You got to find that win-win, because if Africa produces more maize and soy, obviously less maize and soy is going to be imported from the U.S., Brazil, or elsewhere. What is USDA's view? How do we find that win-win solution? And exactly to the point that John was raising, in fact. Clay, over to you. I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a tough question, but I'll do my best to answer it. And I understand y'all had a little trouble hearing me last time, so let me know if I'm not coming through okay.
You're good now.
Yeah, the USDA, we really understand that overall, we've got a lot of growing population with climate change. We need to be helping countries improve their ag sector because we can't be the breadbasket for everyone. And we know that we're going to have to step up production throughout the world. So we have no problem helping countries learn how to do things better. And actually, Secretary Vilsack, one of his big goals is through the climate change efforts is to really help promote innovation and efforts to make sure that people have the tools they need to be productive. We do a lot of capacity building. I know he just mentioned training and things like that. We coordinate with AID. We don't have our own funds to do it, but we're very happy to coordinate with them. And we've done quite a few programs in Africa, helping farmers learn better practices, helping countries do more in terms of regulations and practices. But one of the other areas that we focus on really is trying to set the stage so that trade can happen and that the African countries can really participate in the global economy. We do a lot of training with countries about regulations, food safety regulations, standards. If you don't have common standards or standards that people can meet, then you can't have trade. It's hard to get products into Africa. It's hard to get products out of Africa into other countries. So we spend a lot of effort on that. We also look at market access issues, trying to make sure that that those are manageable. The other thing, and I think this is very important, is our trade associations are really looking for partnerships in Africa. Our poultry industry is very interested in exporting poultry, but they realize that there's a market there and they want to participate. They want to be part of it. They aren't looking to replace African producers. So they do training to help African poultry producers do a better job of their system. Our soybean producers go in and help companies in Africa establish production facilities for poultry, for meat, other things using U.S. soybeans, but they teach them how to be more productive to provide the end products. So we're really looking to stimulate those partnerships in any way that we can, because that's the way we grow forward. Is if we do it together. We don't want to be just an exporter to Africa. We want to become a partner so that you can use our experience, we can learn from you, and we can really benefit from what we both bring to the table. So I'll leave it at that. And if you have other questions, I'm happy to continue.
Thank you, Clay. And I think you bring up a very important point. I mean, in this whole broad discussion of U.S. and Africa, sort of going from aid to trade, step number one. Step number two is trade to joint venture, co-investment. And I think even within USA, they're not on here, but what used to be the West Africa Trade Hub is now West Africa Trade and Investment Hub. So I think there's that recognition of win-win partnerships coming in. We're not just going to be shipping commodities, we're actually coming with know-how and partners, with American companies coming in to make the sort of partnerships with Africa. And I think I'm going to leave you last, Fatah, because I want you to speak to that effect. But can I go to Mulai right now and then to Musonda? But Mulai, on OCP role and this whole, modernizing agriculture, clear component obviously is the fertilizer and the inputs coming in to be able to become more industrial, if you will. You touched on it a little bit, I think, earlier as to OCP role, but develop, if you can, a little further, how can, because some of the questions coming in, for example, are how can you participate, African youth, participate more and get into agribusiness and agro-industry? Is OCP in any way able to also assist on that aspect? Over to you, Mulai.
Okay, thank you, Mima. I think all what we are doing is already part of agribusiness, because for me, I understood agribusiness is start from agriculture, and that is what we want. We want our agriculture to be a business, from agriculture to the transformation, including the input manufacturing. But as I told you, now we are not limiting ourselves to at the level of the industry and manufacturing and producing the inputs. We are moving to the fields, and we are moving to the farmers to assist them, to give them, to provide them assistance, and also to play this catalytic role to bring other partners that can also help and contribute to address the issues faced by the farmers. And for me, to improve the agribusiness, it starts from the beginning, from the foundation, from the agricultural production, as Mr. Jones said. We need to improve to make sure that the farmers are, entering in this virtuous circle. We need to make sure that the productivity and the revenue of the farmers are really reaching a level that makes their production sustainable. I just has been in Senegal, and I meet one of the CEO of one tomato manufacturing, no, not tomato, and also groundnut. And the issue is you have the plant, you have the industry, but the issue is they cannot even have the raw materials. And when you ask why you cannot have the raw material, the issue is at the level of the policy, all this, the distortionary policy intervention that have an impact on the prices. And sometimes the prices, someone can come and provide higher prices that can also push the product to leave the country while we have an industry protect. So what we are doing is, you have just said that instead of shipping raw materials, our vision is to help, the countries to transform locally their raw material. And this is the objective of the fertilizer plant we are working on in Nigeria, because they have the gas, and also in Ghana we have the gas, and also in Ethiopia. So we we don't want to limit ourselves just to send the finalized, the finished product. We want to help the country to transform locally. In terms of like another example, OCP now we have a capacity of 12 million, tons of fertilizer. We are able, to shift and to produce mini formula, but in our vision, we decide to produce just the raw material and support the local partners, the private, to build local blending. So our role will be just to supply the raw material, and it's now to the local partner, to the local private sector, to invest in the blending and also to have this customized formula done in the country. So this is our strategy, is to support at the upstream level, the farmers, to increase their productivity, because this is the key, and also to make sure that we are also helping, contributing to transform locally the raw materials. And also one key is this partnership, this strategic partnership with local and also either private and sector partners locally.
Thank you, Mulai. So I think we keep coming back to this critical importance of that value addition. I mean, it's all about corn to cornflakes, if I can put it that way, and cornflakes to nutritious cornflakes. So maybe with that, I'll segue back over to you, Monica. And please touch a bit about, I mean, you're new, an SME, a growing SME in Zambia. You want to become like a flour mills of Nigeria of that size. I know you've had some experience in Nigeria too. So how does a small company grow? And what is the role? Because I keep getting asked questions by youth, African youth, saying, how can we participate in that growth? Can you touch on those two aspects? SME, growing, what do you need to really get there? And how can youth assist you in that process? Over to you, Monica.
Sure. Thanks very much for that question. I think we've definitely talked about this. We're talking about agribusiness. So we are now no longer just speaking about farming, which is something here in Zambia we do exceptionally well. And over the years, we've seen growing. The problem is in the value chain. It hasn't just been able to work. And actually, if you look at statistics, SMEs are actually scattered along the value chain. They are the guys who are picking up some of the crops. They are your distributors. Some of them are your retailers. However, they're still very fragmented. They still need a lot of support on how to grow, how to scale, and that sort of thing. The reality is that SMEs are actually very much entrenched in the agribusiness value chain, but at a very sort of micro level. So I think I want to start off with that. What we want to see actually now is a lot more support about how we can grow at various stages in the value chain. So how can we make sure the value chain works better, more efficiently, can reduce costs, and also that we really focus on what we can do best. So Zambia does not have palm oil, so it's something we shouldn't be bothering about, but perhaps we should be looking at sunflowers and how we can now process that, but really looking at raw materials which grow very well where we are currently situated and now adding value to that. The biggest problem has been, from my perspective, is starting my business. I was actually a corporate lawyer for many years and then decided my hat in processing. And my biggest hurdle was really technology and know-how. I must say this on this forum that I've been very privileged to work with the US government under USAID, under the Feed the Future program. And they have really supported us on things like formulation for products, shelf life analysis. I mean, you'll be surprised how difficult it is when you create a new product to understand how long it can sit on a shelf for. Remember, we are becoming a very urbanized environment, and simple things like shelf life, I mean, even simple things like labeling. I mean, the technology and the information sharing from countries like the United States has been very helpful for businesses such as mine about why we must label products in a certain way, for people to really understand what is in the product, why it is in there, or why it shouldn't be in there. And it's really important, particularly when you push a nutrition agenda, that when you're using the words like nutritious, it actually is nutritious and you're not really misleading the public on what is good for you. So I think I continue to really push the aspect of value addition because we just don't see enough of it. And we are still the only way for Africa to change from being a net importer, and many countries, including Nigeria, actually. I mean, John, you guys do a great job, but you're still very much a net importer of food. And the only way we're going to turn this around is really fixing, adding more value to food within the countries, really ensuring that we get as much raw material within those countries, and also feeding our people. I mean, we really do have aspects of food insecurity throughout the continent, yet we do have capacity to feed a lot of the people on the continent. So I hope that was at least answered that question well.
Thank you, Monica. No, I think we're diving into this, and I want to come back now to Fatai and Fayez. And I think you yourself now, as I said in the introduction, initially was basically only sourcing from Africa, shipping back finished products. You're now looking at particularly, I think, if you can maybe touch on the high quality cassava flour and the cassava value chain. What are your plans for Nigeria now coming back as a Nigerian diaspora in terms of investing in Nigeria, and what are the challenges you face? I mean, it's an interesting, Kumantaros, John, you've been Nigeria on both sides. Fatai, to some extent, has left, now coming back. So it's an interesting play that I was really looking forward to this discussion. Fatai, please, from your perspective, and I know you're very sort of determined on this whole scaling and industrialization of agriculture, which obviously is what we're all speaking about, and how in your sort of plans do the youth and the young populations of Nigeria in this case come into play in your plans? Over to you, Fatai.
Oh, thank you so much, Nima, and the group of the panelists. I think I'm just going to summarize it in 2 words. We can achieve everything that we are all talking about via industrialization and scalability. Okay. At this point in Africa, we are still dependent on subsistence farming. So in order for us to even feed ourselves, okay, we not even talk about globalization. We have to industrialize every sector of the agribusiness. So if we're talking about maize, please, let's introduce innovation. Let's introduce, America produces how many billion of bushels of corn every year? The potatoes, billions of bushels. Okay, wheat. So if we can, Africa cannot survive just being by subsistence farming. All right, and we have to make it very lucrative, very, we have to make it, give it a style to attract the youth that farming and the agribusiness is a big business. Okay, how do we do that? Okay, under the subsistence farming, you have a lot of wastes, okay, that are done because everybody just want to grow something to eat, to sell to a few people, and just survive. We have to get away from all that mentality. And the only thing that we can do is to industrialize. Okay, for example, flour mill has been in Nigeria for years. Okay, there are a lot of challenges. Okay, at the same time, the SMEs and the smallholder farmers have not been entirely incorporated into the industrialization mechanization of Africa. All right. So, as Mule just mentioned earlier, okay, and as John knows, and Monica will attest to the fact that there are a lot of industries that are not able to operate because of supply chain. Okay, so how can you? How do we do it? How do we do it to make sure that there is availability of raw materials? Okay, what program can you put in place? It's not by assigning everything to the USAID or the USDA. So USDA, we know, okay, and this is the experience that we're bringing back to the African continent. Okay, we know the rules of labeling. We know the rules of accessing the market. We know what it takes. Okay, but what are we looking for? We have to make sure that if we industrialize African farming, then we can have scalability, we can have sustainability. So if we have those three items put together, not only we will be more competitive in the global market, then we will become an equal partner, okay, in the global setting. And at the same time, we have enough for the domestic use. The domestic use must be taken care of first before we take care of the global needs. Okay, so having said that, here the innovation is here, the technology is around. Okay, so we have to partner with other public and private sectors who are adept, who have the knowledge of the technology that can be imported into Africa to make it accessible, to have the accessibility in realizing that goal of industrialization. I give you an example. Okay, Dangote did not become Dangote overnight. Okay, so we have to work with public sectors who will make the business conducive to business, so that we can do our job. The business of Africa is for the business people. Business is not meant to be done by the government. Government access or government contribution is to give us a conducive environment to operate. Okay, if we leave it to the private sector with the guidance of the government giving us that access and that conduciveness, believe me, we will get the job done, and the raw materials will always be there, and the farmer will be happy. Okay. We have not even coordinated a good group that can amalgamate all the proceeds, all the seeds or whatever grain that we have, so that the farmers can be treated equally as a partner, okay, and they can have good income. And this is one of the reasons why I stepped in and I'm providing adequate jobs for people in Nigeria, even for people in Zambia. Okay, I'm talking about the farmers right now. Okay, and I'm talking about providing middle-class income for all those professionals that work for us. See, without this industrialization scheme and the scalability, then we can just keep talking and not getting anything done. I am a result-oriented person. Okay, without getting a good result and making money off of it, then there's no use for me to be doing it. So in order to get, in order to achieve these goals, all we have to do is we lay down the infrastructure. The infrastructure, not only in roads, but on how to get your strategy in place to achieve that industrialization and scalability.
Thank you, Fatai. If I can take that, I think it's a good segue, because in fact, a couple of questions have come up with vis-a-vis AGOA and some US programs. It's unfortunate we don't have a sort of an African official, but we do have an American government official. And Clay, on this sort of whole PPP aspect, there's a question, first of all, AGOA, has it really helped in any which way to increase agro products, food products from Africa to the US market? And if you will touch on that, because I think it comes back to the point that you were saying, where USDA now, as part of your sort of new initiatives, is looking at basically being able to support on the certification issues, the standards, all those aspects of being able then to be more, if you will, ready, export ready or import ready for the US and elsewhere once you have the standards. What is that role? Can you dig in a little more how USDA can help out on that, and how they can help out African businesses to really access the US market with an AGOA, at least as it exists at this point in time? Clay, over to you.
Well, thank you. I don't have the statistics, but from my experience in talking with countries in Africa, they really do appreciate the AGOA program. It allows them to export quite a bit of agricultural products to the U.S. There's a couple of aspects I want to cover. One is just because there's not a tariff, we still have our same sanitary and phytosanitary standards that we have for everyone, the regulations, and that's where we really, I think is important that countries have a strong basis so that they understand what they need to do in order to export, whether it's to the US or to Europe or wherever. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that, there's been some comments about needing to be more self-sustaining in production. And I just want to add a little comment to that. The US is the largest food exporter in the world. We're also the largest food importer of the world. And so as people have these conversations about increasing production and self-sustainability, I just encourage them to really think regionally. With climate change and other things, I know Africa has particularly had problems. If you're relying on a specific crop and there's a drought or a monsoon or something else, then your population is really in a bind. And so what we try to do is support regional agreements, regional cooperation, so that you have backups and, so that your country can focus on producing what makes the most sense for your country, your climate conditions, your growing conditions. And then you have ways to trade with other countries so that you can meet the needs for your country. We do that a lot by working with groups like the Africa Union, through AGOA and other things. Our biggest challenge is the sheer size and diversity of the Africa region. We're a small agency. We can't get to every person that we want to in Africa. So we do a lot of what we call train the trainer. We want to help teach government officials how to do their job better and what resources they have. We want to go and identify leaders within the ag community that we can bring over for some of our training programs with the explicit plan that they take that information back and replicate it back in their home country. So just the sheer size of Africa makes it really hard to make a dent in some of the issues. And so we have to work, we have to be efficient, we have to work strategically, and we certainly want to do that in coordination with groups like this and with governments and in the private sector, because you can help us identify the key leaders, you can help us identify the opportunities, and we want to do everything that we can to pass that information on. But unfortunately, we just don't have an unlimited budget and unlimited workforce to actually get out there and be on the ground as much as we'd like to. But we're really looking forward to additional opportunities to fine tune what we're doing.
Great. Thank you, Clay. Let me open it up to the panel now. I mean, there's a couple of questions here, if I can direct it this way. One is this African Continental Free Trade Zone now. Does it really make a difference or not for agro-industry, particularly the African producers? Secondly, we keep speaking about, Fatai touched on it, as John, as others have, the role of government, both the U.S. government, of course, we don't have the African government rep here, but I'll make sure we pass the message through. What is the message to the African government officials? And two, the Continental Free Trade Zone, potential asset or a real asset? How do we look at it as agro producers? Open, who wants to speak for it? Monica. You look like you're ready.
Yes,
Go ahead. Fire
I
away.
am, because I just got off a seminar, a webinar in Nigeria, the Logistics Association, talking about the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and we are fully supportive of it. I think what it has done is really highlighted some of the problems with respect to trade within each other, with respect to supply chain issues, and really trying to now target things like non-tariff barriers. I mean, you'll be surprised what we go through here in Southern Africa. Simple things like getting an import permit for every country, going through certificates of conformity, when you can actually, particularly this is for food products, if we have a standard, if we agree on certain things, then it's a lot easier for us to find market for our products. What this has done actually is brought us African governments together, as well as African industry, and said, these are the clear problems. I mean, we obviously have a problem with infrastructure. That is a really, really big issue about really trying to manage border issues and the like. But there are other things we can really work on and drill down on, working together, private sector, other key stakeholders, government, to focus on the other challenges like, trade bottlenecks, reducing complexities around trade. How do we get products across? This aspect of standards, I mean, it is standards for food are very well known. I think it's about training, about how do we get more companies to reach those standards and to make sure that they're implemented correctly and without discrimination, because it's not often about, is there a standard? There is a standard, but it's how they're implemented. I mean, products from Botswana are treated differently from products from Zambia, yet the Zambian company may have the standards. So it's those sorts of things. And so for me, I'm very encouraged by this. I'm also encouraged because of COVID, people are now saying this has to actually work, because with all the fractured supply chains around the world, we really have to be much more inward looking. And I know Clay talked about really supporting regional growth and trade, 100%. I mean, particularly for us here in Zambia, who are surrounded by countries, trade in the region is our first priority, and then everyone else is second. But it has to work. We have to really reduce the costs. We have to make procedures much easier. We must agree on, and we must educate our border and customs official on what is happening. It can not only be in the capitals that we're signing this great treaty, but also educating everybody that this is the tariff. It's either zero and no, you cannot apply that on something which is in transit going to Tanzania. So we are excited about this. I think there's a lot of work to be done, but this is a new era. And we are, at least for us here in Zambia, we're pushing forward with it.
Thank you. So the question is, how do we go from photo op to realities here? John, you're sitting in the largest African economy, right? How do you, I mean, you got a double issue. One is meeting the huge market, absolutely Nigeria itself. And then out of that, the export side. One of the things people often forget, because, we keep drawing lessons to the tigers in Asia. But if you really go back with tradition of the economies, and I think Clay will back it up, and he said, people don't realize the U.S. is the largest exporter of food products. Why? Because we have a huge domestic market. We're able then, based on that strength, to export. Can Nigeria do the same, John? And take advantage of that kind of free trade?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the free trade and the Africa free trade agreement, I mean, it's the way forward. And we at FMN look forward to becoming a regional player. And I mean, West African region, and then ultimately a Pan-African food company. So we look forward to that integration. It is the future. That having been said, Nigeria is a market of 200 million people growing by 5 million people. And the rest of Africa and the world are looking at it and saying, that's a nice place where I'd like to send my goods. So it really does have to be a trade. In other words, it has to be, there has to be still at the end of the day, a mercantile system. What you can't import more than you export. So over time, that has to be the equalizer. And I think, Moulay has it very right in terms of, bring in, products from Morocco, but enable the local industries to do that and refine and build the phosphate industry in Nigeria to the extent possible. So I think that's the right model of proceeding. And to Clay's earlier question, I think you answered it very well, Clay. I mean, the job of USDA isn't only to promote agricultural exports. There's also the, there's also the, the further you build capacity, the further you build the value chain. The value chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So we have to build those value chains, which are vital for trade within the country, within a region, within the continent. And, the U.S. does do that and builds the SMEs that have to form a vital part of that. It's so critical to build those SMEs in the, I'm sorry, I don't want to go further, but, in the feed value chain, you make fish feed and you build SMEs that smoke and grow the fish, or the poultry industry, or the beef and the cattle. And, at the end of the day, that's what's going to bring in the Corteva seeds, and which will be developed locally as well, or the John Deere tractors that will be, assembled locally, and the Burger Kings that are going to find meat for their burgers. So I think this building the value chains up the value chain is the way forward. It builds capacity, it builds commerce, it builds trade, and that's the way forward. So
Thank you, John. Fatai, hold a second your thought here. I want to come back to you, but Mulai, because this value chain piece is so critical, because for me, it's not just the value chains internal to Africa, but the international value chains. I mean, it's one thing that the continent is just not in the value chains. We don't have to produce everything. We have to produce components of things that go into various products. Obviously, OCP, phosphate, you're one component of the products. How does OCP look at the Continental Free Trade Zone? Asset to you? I know you're pushing big from Morocco into Africa. How does that really affect your strategic planning going forward? The Continental Free Trade Zone, Mulai.
Yeah, I think as I agree with Monica and Jones, it has to work, and it's the future, because it's just moving from how can I say it? When you are in your country, 30 million to 1 million, 1 billion, 2 million of people. It's a huge market. It will sort out a lot of big issues like the competitiveness, because we are losing in the competitiveness either in the agriculture and in our agribusiness. It's because of the issue of the raw material, the issue of the lack of integration, the lack of the access to the market. So we will gain in competitiveness, and there is a lot of synergy that can be, valued between different countries. You imagine that Africa doesn't need now to have some production in each country, but we need to have, according to the potential, according to competitive advantages, there is some transformation that can be made in one country and not in their country. So there is a lot of synergy, and there is a huge potential that needs to be valued with this free trade. And OCP were already in that mindset of regional integration, because in all our investment, when we invest, we don't only invest taking into account the potential of the country. We are taking the potential of all the region. Otherwise, your agribusiness project will not be bankable. So now also this is another issue. When you have this integration, most of the project that has not been bankable yesterday will become bankable today. So we are pushing for that, and we are already, even before the entry into force of this free trade agreement, we are in that mindset.
Thank you, Mulai. I think this aspect that's maybe beyond discussion today, but the comparative advantages, you just cannot have the big plants in every single country. That's what value chains are all about. What are you most competitive in? You take a banana up to a certain point, and then you do the chips, and you move it forward to the third place to perhaps package. That's what the whole point of the value chains are. But speaking of that, Fatah, I want to come back to you, because I know in the cassava value chain that with your all brands in that, you've been sourcing worldwide. You're going as far as Vietnam, trying to get enough of the cassava raw material that you need for your products. tell us a little bit about the frustration of that. And secondly, why is it now that you're thinking you're coming back to looking at being able to source again from the continent, from West Africa, particularly of some, I believe, areas of collaboration you're also having with the West Africa Trade Investment Hub to help increase that supply, because the U.S. market, as Clay rather was saying, is huge. So the problem I keep hearing from you is, how do I supply the huge market? The issue is not market. Issue is, again, the value chain supply. Speak to me a little bit specifically about the cassava value chain on that. Over to you, Fatai.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mima. Okay. First of all, I will just address the free trade issue. Yeah, the free trade, the African Free Trade Program should have been done decades ago, because we need to improve the intra-African trade. Okay, without that, we will be fighting a fragmented fight against global competitiveness. So there is power to numbers. Instead of you trying to individualize a fight with a global force. That is one thing. And there is a whole lot of advantages in the free trade program if it can be implemented with no hassles, which I found to be a challenge. Okay. Yes, as I said earlier, we've been in the African trade business for over 30 years. Okay, and we've encountered several challenges. And one of the issues was the cassava flour, the cassava starch, all the cassava the byproducts that we consume. Okay, even from gari to the lafo to the meal and everything. So I was forced to entertain and import from Thailand and from Vietnam, from Asian countries, because I couldn't get the kind of supply that I need from Africa. Okay, I was bringing it in from Nigeria, and then I went to Ghana, then it brought me back to Zambia, and I thank CCA for really giving us the reticulation of meeting these other folks in Africa. Okay, and it has helped. And at the same time, I sat down one of these days and I said, wait a minute. If we can industrialize the cassava program in Nigeria, okay, or West Africa, then there's no point in going to Asia to solve for the same product. Okay, so this is the reason why I invested, and we contacted Wati and say to make sure that we have enough production. So, and this is the reason why I keep telling you about industrialization and scalability. Okay, because you cannot just go into Africa and say, hey, you want to industrialize, and your price per unit becomes exorbitantly high. So then you still have to go back to Asia that don't even use that most of the product, or they use it for other sources. So this is the reason why I'm saying that industrialization of just the cassava and scalability is the main issue that we need to work on, and that's what we're working on. That's what we're working on right now, to make sure that we have the high HCQF. Okay, so the quality flour that we're going to get will meet what Clay has been talking about making sure that it meet the phytosanitary, meet the global food standard. Yeah, okay, these are the things that I am aware and I've gone through with USDA. USDA knows me very well, Phase Inc., and we've gone through our own bouts. Okay, we've gone through some destruction because they tested the product. Sometimes it was not labeled correctly, or sometimes it came to. But these are the things that we already have in our belt, and I'm introducing that innovation into African equation. Okay, so before we can get you to participate in our program, you have to go through the global food security initiatives, so that when it comes to the US or to Europe, okay, with that certification, we will not have to be reevaluated again, or go to the exam thing again, and making sure that it meets the program. So these are the things that I'm talking about, about infrastructure. So to make sure that we comply with the system, that whenever I say it's nutritious, it is nutritious. Whatever I say, hey, this is 10% cassava, is this 10% cassava? So these are the things that we are, as a company, trying to introduce into that industrialization. When we're talking about the farmers, so the farmers are going to be trained. Whoever is going to be in the program, they're going to be trained to make sure that they comply. Without compliance, then you're not going to be part of the group. Okay, so cassava is just one item of the food, of the agribusiness, that nobody knows where. I mean, we don't have it in the US. Okay, so thank God, at least we can compete with that. So because if we have it in the US, believe me, US will be the supplier, exporter of this product for all over the world. So thank for the climate for giving this one to Africa. So that is part of our research to say, hey, look, we can compete in this. So after we feed our people, then we can compete. So these are the things why we invest in the cassava initiatives for Africa. We're going to we're starting from West Africa, and it's still going to go beyond, go to other parts of Africa, because I've been importing from Zambia on the cassava mill, and we've been doing, they've been able to meet, okay, my quota, okay, based on the few farmers that we are working with. But if we can extend that program to Zambia, Zimbabwe, Southern Africa, and Tanzania, instead of the Chinese, because China now is investing, is buying all the cassavas in Africa. They invested like $1 billion in cassava initiatives in Tanzania. And what did they do? They take all this cassava out and they use it for the ethanol and use it for their own chips. So, but with us going in and we're seeing the challenge of the Chinese, so we want to not only supply those people, but we want to use our own technology and innovation to make sure that we can scale our own production in Africa. And with the free trade agreement, believe me, we can do it.
Great. Thank you for that. And I think you're going to have separate discussions with Monica, because if you're sourcing from Zambia, then this is one of the values of CCA, this cross-fertilization of industry interests. I want to just one quick question to Clay, and then I'll do a quick 1 minute lightning round with everybody as we start to wrap up here. Clay, the question that's come up again, and I think if you can actually come back to that, we keep talking industrialization. So people, USDA, they think production. How can USDA support the industrialization of agriculture, agro-processing in Africa with African companies, maybe jointly with American companies? And I lead back, actually, I'd be my own back knowledge. At one point, something called Facilities Guarantee Program. I think there was attempting to go in that direction. What is the thinking now? I know you have a group, you're trying to see how to become more active. You have here African agro-industrialists. There are many more out there in the continent. How can USDA really support them with bringing American partners with them Over to you, Clay.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned the Facility Credit Guarantee Program. That is a program where we can provide credit guarantees for infrastructure development in a country. It's a little hard for us to manage because one of the criteria is that the infrastructure has to provide to ensure that there will be increased exports of U.S. ag products. It doesn't have to be solely used for ag products from the U.S., but it has to at least increase the ability. So finding the right project that it is a little tricky, but we keep looking for it. But the other areas, I think we do quite a bit of training. We've done a lot of regional training on cold chain development because that can be critical for helping improve high value products, both production and distribution and sales. We've done that all over the world, but we continue to do that in Africa. And I mentioned our cooperators, like the American Soybean Association, the Poultry or U.S. Poultry and Egg Export Council, Meat Export Federation. They're all very interested in programs, and they bring a lot of technical experience and opportunities for industrialization, for joint ventures, and other things like that. So while USDA may not have specific programs, we do really try to link up, our exporters and groups with the right people in Africa. We focus on exports, but that doesn't mean we're looking at exports only next week or next month. We see the value in exports that come 20 years from now.
Okay.
We want to develop that partnership and that relationship. So 20 years, 30 years from now, we're operating on a much more equal footing. So we're very happy to work with developing countries and help expand.
Super, Clay. I think we're getting into very last minutes here. So I think one of the things, if I can just really make quick pitch, we are within CCA creating, we've had this agribusiness working group that we want to really ramp up. And in that discussion, I'll be bringing you in and some of the, various initiatives of DFC, USA, and others. So keep that in mind. A quick lightning round, 30 seconds each. Are you optimistic or pessimistic that agro-industry in Africa both feed Africa and be a powerful export potential? Monica, optimistic, pessimistic? Over to you. 15 seconds. They're running out of time.
Optimistic, of course. Like certain key things have to be put into place. I think we've discussed all the challenges and what we want to see going forward, but I'm still very optimistic.
Good, super. John?
An absolute necessity. It's the only way forward. Has to happen and will happen.
Great. Mulai? You're muted. You're running out of your 15 seconds.
Okay, so the optimism is the driver that really our driver to do all what we are doing now in Africa.
Super. Last word for Ty.
Highly optimistic. Highly optimistic.
Thank you. So there you have it, Clay. We will be coming back and looking at U.S. investors joining us on the African continent going forward through this working group we will put together. And thank you for the panelists, for all your wonderful thoughts and ideas. The conversation will continue. Action will continue. That's the most important thing. Ekonem, back to you.
Thank you, Mima, and all our great panelists for an excellent discussion. And thank you all for participating in this session. Please join us for the next sessions that start exactly at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, which includes some great panels on health and tourism. Thank you all.
Very good. Big round of applause. Thanks, panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, TCA. Bye.